Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Valdore class. All right, so originally designed in 2368, the Valdore was labeled as unneeded by the Romulan military. At the time, the Romulan thinking was that the uh, Dietrich's class of warbird was unmatched by anything in the Starfleet or Klingon fleets. With the production of the Prex I'm going to mess some of these up. I'm sorry. The Prex class cruiser, a much smaller ship. The Romulans felt that even if the enemy had smaller, more maneuverable ships, and were able to run circles around the Dietrichs, the Prex would be able to overwhelmingly counter them. The prototype ship sat in storage as the Romulus Imperial Fleet Yard until 2376, with the Romulan fleet taking moderate losses during the Dominion War, mainly because even the largest Dominion ships could outmaneuver the Dietrichs, and the Prex was no match for these ships. The Romulan Senate ordered the Valdore class into production, taking advantage of newer technologies as well as advice from the Federation and Klingon allies. The Valdore prototype was rebuilt from the keel up. Designed to be a strike cruiser, the Valdore primary beam pulse weapons were actually more powerful than the larger Dietrichs. Type 320 compared to 1 Type 21 of the Dietrichs. However, this is balanced out with fewer torpedo launchers and secondary beam slash pulse weapons. The Valdore also has better maneuverability than the Dietrichs and is somewhat faster. However, the biggest drawback to the class is its shielding. Romulan beliefs are that a strike cruiser should be a heavily armed, fast ship able to rush in, attack a target, and get out. Not stand nose to nose with larger ships, or even uh, with ships of its own size, unless the enemy's tactical systems are inferior. The Valdore's missions also include advanced scouting, a role it's taking over from the older Romulan scout vessels due to its greater speed. Six of the new ships were already built by the mid 2376 and rushed to the front lines. Commanding the small task force was a man soon to be very well known in the Star Empire and the Federation, known as Shinzon of Remus. The new Valdore strike force deployed on its first mission in November of 2376, attacking a Breen starship. The base was destroyed in less than 20 minutes. Other engagements followed against ever increasing tougher targets. Shinzon proved to be a tactical master, winning every engagement he fought in and catapulting the Valdore's status as a great ship. By the end of the war, there were nearly as many Valdore type warbirds in the front line as the Dietrich's type warbirds. Today, there are almost 100 Valdore type warbirds in the Romulan military. Their latest battle came against the man that helped them create a name of their own, Shinzon. However, Shinzon was able to use his knowledge of the class to destroy one and heavily damage another, the IRV Valdore itself. When the ship, the two ships aided the USS Enterprise E in its attempt to stop Shinzon from reaching Earth in an attempt to destroy all life on the planet. After the encounter, the Valdore classes current in service and future ones were refitted with higher intensity power cores and more advanced shielding systems, as well as more advanced science capabilities. Now the Valdores are more multifunctional vessels than the Dietrichs, with more advanced weapons and similar shields the Valdore will help pave the way for the future of the Romulan ship design. Okay, so this is all coming from Bravo Fleet. So we're going to switch on over here in a minute to Memory Alpha, which I'm sure we're going to have a repetitive mantra on the ship itself, but I do want to kind of note a couple things that are listed here. All right. So, according to Bravo Fleet, the expected life design for the ship is probably about 80 years with a refit every 10 years, and it's an expected resupply cycle every 3 years. They're saying it's got about a 500 crew capacity, length of 604 meters, width of 755 meters, a height of 134 meters, giving it roughly about 30 decks. Now, I know this is going to change compared to our write up because that's from D6 Holocron, and normally they don't take anything from Bravo Fleet, but I want to say I think their cruise speed was 5. So we have a standard cruise of warp 7, a maximum warp speed of 9.5, and a max emergency speed is what how they list theirs, or max rated for a 9.8 for 12 hours. Now I might quick throw those in there as like an extra, because as we can kind of see here, there are going to be different variants. So maybe the original one was a little bit slower, but the current design has been sped up, seeing that it is mentioned here that it was rebuilt from the hull platings on up, trying to make sure that it is updated from when it was originally commissioned. So let's just kind of take that for what it is as we get on over here to Memory Alpha. So, looking at what Memory Alpha has, the Valdore type was a Romulan warbird design active in the 24th century. History wise, we have in 2379 two warbirds of this type, one of them, the Valdore itself, under command of Commander Dantra. It's been a while since I've watched a movie. Came to the assistance of the USS Enterprise E in engaging the Riemann warbird Scimitar in the Bassin Riff. Both ships were critically damaged during the battle, and this is, of course, from Star Trek Nemesis. In Brad Boimer's 2381 holonovel class, Crisis Point 2, Paradoxus, the villainous Nepfor triplets commanded a Valdore type warbird. Unlike the real life design, this warbird mounted a large ventral fin on the tail, giving it a little extra distinction. All right, physical arrangement here. Similar to the design of the Dietrich's class warbird, the Valdore type was a large fixed wing vessel. Ships of this class had a color scheme of dark green or brown. With the wingspan roughly 900 meters wide, so they're saying it's even wider, the vessel features a large section extending forward to create a downsloped head shape. Warp nacelles were connected to the ends of each of the wings with impulse engines mounted aft. The hull was marked by distinctive feather type shape painting or plating. Sorry. All right, tactical systems. Ships of the Valdore type featured several forward mounted disruptor banks located on each wing and some on the forward section of the ship. It had at least one forward torpedo launcher able to fire 4 torpedoes for each recharge. Bridge wise, the command center of the Valdore type consisted of roughly circular room, distinguished by several console positions. The room had a dark metallic brown color scheme with green graphics on the computer monitors. With the computers lining the rear bulkheads, a center seat or command chair and freestanding console were flanked by 2 additional stations. The Valdore type also had a view screen which was opal shaped. All right. Um, Background information, which is always the fun stuff here. In the screenplay of Star Trek Nemesis, both the first draft and shooting script, the vessels of this type were referred to merely as Romulan warbirds, with no indication as to whether they would they were intended to be the Dietrich's class or a newer type. Although the film's producers could have feasibly reused the Dietrich's class from the Star Trek Next Generation in Nemesis, they were insistent about instead wanting a brand new style of Romulan warbird in the movie, which I always think is good. Um, Star, Star Trek: The Official Starship Collection, issue 31, page 14, is where they're getting that information from. In his blog, concept artist John Eves had stated, "It's always called the Valdore class in what we were doing, and this was the signature Valdore. As far as I know, it had no other class name. For the exterior, the job of designing the type of vessel as a new version of the Romulan warbird was assigned to John Eves. He decided to base the Valdore on a couple of vessels that had been created years previously, such as the Klingon Bird of Prey from Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, of which he was a longtime fan. I thought, well, I'll take that and rearrange it a little bit. Eves recalled he actually proceeded from the then behind the scenes assumption based on an early draft of the script that the Bird of Prey was a Romulan ship stolen by the Klingons. Eves based his design of the Valdore on a supposition that the Bird of Prey had been a typical configuration of Romulan vessel, and that the Klingons had either bought or stolen the Bird of Prey or its technology from the Romulan warbird Valdore. Could easily fit into the design realm of what has been seen before, only heavily modified. All right. Another starting point that John Eves took inspiration from while producing concept artwork of the Valdore was the Dietrich's class, which had been designed for the next generation by illustrator Andrew Probert. I ran to Andy's ship from the archaeological lineage to use as a cornerstone for the renderings, Eves stated. He was inspired by one aspect of that design in particular. It took the cowling from the front of the next generation warbird and incorporated it with my new kind of stylized bird of prey, he reflected. So it was kind of a progression of the bird of prey in Andy's warbird. While John Eves was busy illustrating concept sketches of the new Romulan warbird, his boss, production designer Herman Zimmerman, uh, also commissioned illustrator David Negron. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, and I apologize, Junior, to devise some concept designs for the same vessel. He worked independently of Eves at the other side of Paramount Lot, and it was hoped that the arrangement would result in a variety of different looks of the ship, from which the final design would be selected. David came up with a very aggressive T-tailed design that incorporated some of the lines from Andy Probert's Next Generation Warbird. Said Eves. He compacted the design, and I really liked the interpretation he came up with. John Eves included wings in his version of the craft, making it the new warbird seem raptor like. In his initial sketches of the Valdore, however, he experimented with different wing positions. For example, his second concept passed um, a feature of upswept wings, if I can only read here correctly. Let's see. Regarding the rendition, Eves remarked, "It almost had a Batman feel to it. That's why I ditched it." Eves ultimately filled a single page with 3 or 4 ideas of how he intended the new warbird to might look. The page was then taken to the art meeting at which Hans Zimmerman and the producers chose one of the designs. Herman Zimmerman came back with a circle around one of the drawings, said he wanted to see more on that one. Let's see. As requested, John Eves created a few more detailed sketches based on the chosen design, including some in which the exterior panels featured a feather pattern. He based these on books about birds such as hawks and condors. It was really fun. He enthused. Eves noticed, however, that the feather patterns looked too similar to that on the panels of the Klingon bird of prey's hull. So I took all mine off and redid them so they would be different. All right. Eves noted once he had devised a feather pattern for the warbird that he felt was unique enough. Eves focused on the underbelly details and the warp nacelles. At first, he placed a pair of secondary warp nacelles on the underside of the ship. This was to further the vessel's original backstory that they were an unusual type of nacelle, to be used only while the ship was cloaked, so as to mask the ship's warp trail. Eves felt the nacelles spoiled the sweeping lines of the vessel, so he ended up moving them to the ends of the outer wings, started working on the subtle arched bi-wing. He explained, "The extra wing added a good breakup of the forward view and helped tie in with the design flow and Andy had come up with for the next generation." After the final approval, design to Valdore was built as a CGI model at Digital Dominion, uh, or Domain, I'm sorry, by Andy Wilkoff. Eves was delighted to collaborate with Wilkoff and encouraged him to add his own creative input to the design. He did a lot of really beautiful work too, adding personality to the ship that wasn't there in the drawings, Eves commented. One of my all time favorite ships adding. He and the modeling work was beyond incredible, which, I will admit that the ship did really look good in the movie. The bridge of the Valdor was a redress of the bridge of the Enterprise E. Only a few pieces were retained for that configuration of the set. Those which were kept were repainted, recarpeted, and rendered unrecognizable because of the same platform was used for both versions of the set, though the Romulan version still had the same shape of the Enterprise's bridge. The Valdor's command chair was um represented with a Klingon bridge chair that had been used since Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The view screen, the Valdor was a reuse of Sauna's version of Star Trek Insurrection. The chairs from the USS Voyager were incorporated into the set, as was a Cardassian computer console at the center of the room, and 2 computers recycled from the old Klingon bird of prey dating back to the Final Frontier. It's great to know that they can, that they do have a lot of this stuff sitting back in storage and they just grab here and there, redress it a little bit. It is kind of fun to learn all that stuff. All right. The Star Trek customizable card game refers to the Valdor type as the Norexian class. So, the Star Trek Titan novels from Pocket Books classify the Valdor as the Mogai class, after the man-sized predatory bird native to Romulus. Star Trek Online does so as well, though it also features an upgraded version of which referred to it as the Valdore class. According to the Titan series, the Valdore type ship was smaller than the Dietrich's class vessels, but are newer and more heavily armed. With more advanced weaponry, this may explain the significant difference in the appearance of the vessel's weaponry compared to that of the Dietrich's class, which is portrayed as firing bright neon green torpedoes and disruptors. Also, according to the Titan series, the Valdore type significantly outnumbers the Dietrich's class in terms of numbers within the fleet. All right. With all that being read through, hopefully we get everything kind of buttoned up on the ship. Let's see what we have for our D6 stats. Keep in mind, there is a slight difference between some of them for some of the stats here. So let's see what we have. All right, so looking at the Valdor class here in our D6 stats, we do have a class of warbird at a capital scale. Length is going to be listed at 603 meters with a width of roughly about 900 meters. So keeping it in that same scale frame. This is a size 8 starship. Autopilot on this would be a 3D point or 3D plus 2. We have a crew listed as 875 with a skeleton crew of 88 personnel. We have enough room on board ship for 240 passengers, most likely like Marines or other troops. Cargo capacity is going to be roughly 250,000 metric tons, and we should have enough consumables on board for about 3 years. Now, the warp drive, like I said initially, and this is what D6 Holocron has got, a typical cruise speed is going to be warp 5. Max warp would be at 8, and max rated is at 9.6 for 12 hours. Now, taking from the beta, and I'm forgetting the name of the website there, that I looked this up on, they have it listed as a 7, a 9.5, and a 9.8 for 12 hours. So I did throw that in there. Depending on which one you want to take, if you want to consider this as an earlier version compared to a later version, you can kind of work with it in those regards. All right, of course, we're going to have a nav computer on board, and a maneuverability is listed as a 1D plus 2. This has a space speed of 9.5, a hull rating of 6D plus 1, an armor rating of 1D plus 2, and shields of 3D. So keep in mind that armor rating is going to negate whatever points are going to kind of go through into the hull, giving it a little extra protection. All right, our sensor packet here has a passive scan out to 4 kilometers with a 2D bonus, an active scan out to 12 kilometers with a 3D bonus, an active search out to 15 kilometers at a 3D plus 2 bonus, and a focus out to 500 meters at a 4D plus 2 bonus. Now, there is a cloaking device on board, so while it is cloaked, it has a plus 4D difficulty to try and detect this ship. All right, our weapons packets here. We have 4 type Adriev disruptor arrays. This has a fire control of 2D plus 2. Rate of fire is going to be 5, and damage is 5D plus 2. We also have 12 type Ugriel disruptor arrays, 2 in the forward, 3 in the port, 3 in the starboard, and 2 in the aft. Fire control is 2D plus 2. Rate of fire is 3, and the damage is 4D plus 2. These are both at capital scale. And we also have 7 high-yield torpedo launchers, again at capital scale. A spread of 10. Fire control is 2D plus 2. And for some reason, they don't have a damage. Oh, okay. So depending on what torpedoes we have. All right. If we have the class, what is that, 14 type plasma torpedoes, it's a 12D. If it's a Type G2 Singularity torpedoes, that's an 8D. And that then takes us to our tractor beams. The ammunition for these, the plasma torpedoes, is 40 of them total, and the Singularity torpedoes, there's 900 of these total on board. Quite a bit of torpedoes there for this warbird. We have 3 Class Delta tractor beams, 2 in the front and 1 aft. Strength on this is going to be a 4D plus 2. We also have a Class Alpha tractor beam for the shuttle bay with a strength of 3D. All the fun stuff that we normally get here on the D6 Holocron, which, regrettably, I've been kind of dropping a little bit more on my own when I'm making them. Let's see, we do have Spartan quarters for 200, basic quarters for 800, and expanded quarters for 150, luxury quarters for 25 personnel, and 10 unusual quarters. We do have 180 escape pods on board the ship, with a capacity for 12 beans in each one. And this is commissioned in 2375 by Earth Reckoning. We do have 6 transporters on board for capacity of 6 personnel in each, 6 emergency transporters with capacity for 24 personnel in each, and 5 cargo transporters for 400 kilograms each transporter. There are a listing for 8 shuttlecraft and 130 probes. I'm not going to read this through because I think we've read enough of this from 2 different websites, and we've gotten a pretty good view of what this bird is in reality. It is an interesting bird. It is a nice design. Getting to that sleeker look is always kind of nice. And we'll have to see what they do going forward. I know that Star Trek Online is really some of the bigger ways that we can keep going forward, although the game has been kind of aging a little bit. And, they're adding things in there from some of the newer series, which, whether you or are not a big fan of, that's all up to you. And I leave it up to you for however you like it. I mean, everyone's going to be a little different, and that's perfectly fine. Whether it appeals to me or doesn't, that doesn't change things. It's us in the gaming community as well as the fans that keep these franchises going. Even if it's with stuff that we don't care for and we just hang on to the beloved series that we do really care for. So with that being said, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's always wonderful having you here. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you in the next video.